Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another From the Vault video. This is a video series that I put out from time to time where I get a gun out of the vault and my personal collection that I want to show off. Maybe it's mechanically interesting, has some type of special history to it, or something I'm just simply proud of. And the rifle that we're going to be taking a look at today is one of my clone rifle builds. And if you've been following my channel for any length of time, you know I love to build clone rifles. I'm really kind of a geek and a nerd, and I like to track down all of the exact parts. I'm not looking for a gun that just looks the part. I'm looking for a gun that is built from the same things that the military uses. And this particular gun is a rifle that I have not seen many people try to clone, and I think it's a very cool rifle, and when it was introduced a few years ago, I knew I wanted one. And so I tried to do my best and track down all of the parts. And this is the Air Force's GAU-5A Aircrew Service Defense Weapon. And essentially it is an AR-15 with a detachable barrel and a folding grip that can be stowed behind the ejection seat of a fighter plane. And thus, if a fighter pilot has to bail out over enemy lines, they can have a weapon to hunt with and defend themselves with, chambered in a pretty formidable caliber. Now, this is a gun that replaced guns like the M6, the AR-7, and the AR-5, which most of those are chambered in .22. So this was a big upgrade for a survival rifle for the military. Now, when they introduced this rifle, they chose to build it with a Midwest Industries handguard. Now, these rifles were all built by the Air Force, but because they used that Midwest Industries handguard, Midwest Industries came out with their own version of the gun. After all, many of the components on the original are mil-spec. So they're like, well, why don't we use our uppers, our lowers, things that look the part and give the consumers something that is pretty darn close. And because they did this, and these kind of sold pretty well, a lot of people misunderstand the situation as Midwest Industries built the guns for the Air Force, and that was not the case. So the reason I want to do this video is I have the opportunity currently to have a Midwest Industries GAU-5A Aircrew Service Defense weapon in the pistol configuration in for review, that I thought I would show off my build and try to reference as much information as I can gather from the Air Force's pictures that they have put out about these guns and show what is not right about the Midwest Industries one, talk about how I source the parts for mine, options you may have, and some difficulties you might encounter if you want to build this gun, and of course show some differences between these two. And then of course there's only some things that I can speculate on, but we're going to talk about that in just a moment. So let me go ahead and adjust the camera. Let's check out my clone rifle build and let's compare it to the Midwest Industries version and see what the differences are, and then reference some pictures from the Air Force and see what is clone correct. So here is my clone rifle build, and before we begin, I do have to say this is a registered SBR because the barrel length is 12.5 inches, and the Midwest Industries gun is a pistol because it also has a 12.5 inch barrel, but it has a pistol brace attached. Now, I'm also going to be referencing a picture that the Air Force released regarding this gun. I'm going to show that picture now. And so this is that rifle in the ejection seat of a fighter plane, or the pouch that may go in the ejection seat. And we can gain a lot of information from this picture. So I want to go over the parts that I was able to obtain from my clone rifle build. The first thing I want to talk about is the magazine. You'll notice in the pictures they don't use black magazines. They use a very specific magazine, which I believe is currently in service. And it has a blue follower and this tan finish, and it has a cage code of 6P199. I forgot the exact manufacturer, but this is a GI magazine, and because they use this one in that picture, this is the one I wanted to obtain for this rifle build. Now, when it comes to the Midwest Industries one, they just provide you with a Midwest Industries magazine with an orange follower. So I want to talk about a few things I was able to deduce from this photo. First off, I'm fairly sure they used a Colt lower and Colt upper receiver. The way that I'm able to tell this, first off, you can see that the one in the picture has a third pin. It is a machine gun. So they're going to have lowers that are already in inventory. They're not going to source new ones and buy new ones when they have perfectly good ones. You can tell from the font around the safety selector switch that it matches the look of a Colt. And many other companies will have larger fonts or different fonts. And so based off of that, I'm fairly sure it is a Colt lower receiver. You'll also notice in the picture that it has a cage-coded upper receiver. And that's what I have here. So we have Colt's cage code of 13629 up here. You can also see that, as I mentioned, in that picture. When it comes to the Midwest Industries firearm, they have simply a Midwest Industries lower. And if you look at the safety selector switch, you can see the font is a little bit bigger and a little bit different, and there is no cage code up here. Now, Midwest Industries did put a marking up here for the gun, the GAU-5A ASDW, but that is not on the original as far as I can tell. Now, I do want to talk about the safety selector switch. You'll notice on the Midwest Industries one, we have one that looks a little bit modern. It has a little bit of a cutout or divot in it. It's also very long. If you look at this side, you can see it is held on by a screw. But the ones that the military uses are made by a company called Schmidt Tool. And that is what I sourced for this. As you can see, this has a very typical safety selector switch, and on this side we have the short safety selector switch on the ambi side, and this is also made by Schmidt Tool. It has the same attachment to it, and that matches the picture that the Air Force put out. So that's how I knew which one to go with, and that is what I would expect them to use, because all of that is going to be pretty normal fare for mil-spec rifles and what the military uses. Now, when it comes to the trigger groups, obviously the one that the Air Force uses is fully automatic. The two I have here on the workbench are semi-automatic. So what I did for my personal rifle is I just put in a standard Colt mil-spec trigger group. I am not 100% sure what Midwest Industries put in theirs, but it looks about the same, functions about the same, but I don't think they put anything special in there. Now, when it comes to the folding grip, Midwest Industries did put on the correct one, the Fab Defense folding grip. I put one on myself. When it comes to the trigger guard, you'll notice that the one the Air Force shows has a standard trigger guard. The one that Midwest Industries uses is a Magpul one. That's an aftermarket one, probably cheap for them to use, but that one is not correct. The one that I put on my Colt rifle is correct. Both of these firearms also use Magpul Pro backup sights, and you can see that in the picture as well. Those are easy parts to come by, and Midwest Industries decided to use that. Obviously, when it comes to these guns, I am running a M4 stock because this is a registered SBR. Midwest Industries went ahead with a pistol brace. Now, if you did buy this firearm, you can SBR it and put on the correct stock. Something that Midwest Industries added that I don't like is they put on a receiver plate which has a QD attachment point to it. You'll notice in the original photo, the one that you see there does not have that, so that's why I went with a standard one myself. I'm not sure why they added that. Maybe that's just their in-house part and they wanted to go with that. Now, one thing I cannot know for certain, but pretty much all military rifles use a 4-position buffer tube, which is standard on most Colts. I'm going to assume they were using one they already had in inventory. Midwest Industries, however, used one that is a 6-position buffer tube, which is more common on the civilian market, but I went with the 4-position on mine. The handguards are exactly the same. So these are the correct handguards for this particular rifle. And I found a way of trying to source them because Midwest Industries got rid of these. They no longer make them. So if you do want to clone this rifle, you have to search long and hard to find one. And they're going to be out of stock everywhere if anybody carries them. So you got to find one on the aftermarket and maybe as a personal sale. And so one of the things I discovered is there are multiple generations of this rail. The ones they technically used on their build were the Generation 3s, but the Generation 1s and 2s are exactly the same. The only difference is a part underneath the handguard. The Generation 1s did not have this little part right here where the screws go through the handguard, and so this could be tightened down even more and bend the handguard. And somewhere along the line they're like, hey, let's add a little piece there so that will not deform the handguard. So that's really the only difference. If you're able to find a Generation 1 or a Generation 2 handguard like this, they will work. You just have to buy that Generation 3 piece. And of course, because Midwest Industries made these, they also provided the correct piece and on the right handguard. And so it's also important to look at the profile of this handguard. We have M-LOK slots on the sides and on the bottom. We also have QD attachment points here in the front. There is a Generation 4 that replaced this. It has a different profile and they got rid of these QD attachment points. There's no rails here on the top, only M-LOK slots. They do have a version of this rail that had rail all the way out, but that would be, of course, non-clone correct. When it comes to the barrel detachment system, this is made by Cry-Havoc, and they offer two versions of it. One that has 2 pins and one that has 1. And if you go on to Cry-Havoc's website, they will say the 2-pin one is more robust and is used by the military. So that is the one that I bought. Now, I am not 100% sure that's the actual one that was on the rifle, but because Cry-Havoc said the 2-pin one was the one ordered by the military, that's the one that I went with, and that's what I put on this one. Midwest Industries, however, went with the cheaper option, which is only a 1-pin system. It costs about $75 to $100 less than the others. They were probably trying to do some cost cutting, and it really doesn't matter when it comes to the performance. Outside they look exactly the same, but I wanted to go with the clone correct option. Now, the other thing that both guns get correct is I put on a standard mil-spec charging handle. You can see that in the picture, and Midwest Industries does exactly the same. Both firearms also have an A2 style flash hider out here in the front. And one of the things I was never able to figure out based off of pictures or information is exactly what barrels they used. I know they used a 12.5-inch barrel. I'm not sure if they procured those barrels from an online source or another company, or simply they just cut down M4 barrels like they did in the early Mark 18 program. I am not 100% sure. I never found any information on that. Midwest Industries just simply uses one of their barrels, and I was able to source one of these barrels. I forgot from where. There's not many companies that make 12.5-inch barrels with government profiles, so I think any barrel will do fine for your build if you can find one. And I think that pretty much is the main differences between these two rifles and how I try to make this gun as clone correct as possible, all the way up into even the correct magazine. Inside of this firearm, I do have a Colt C-marked bolt and bolt carrier. The Midwest Industries one has a Midwest Industries mark. You can see it here. It says MI, and that would not be correct for a clone of this particular gun. Now, I will say I'm very happy with what Midwest Industries did, because it definitely does look the part. You get the right handguard, you get the right barrel, you get the right muzzle device and sights, you get a military profiled upper and lower receiver, you get the correct folding pistol grip. Obviously, if you own this, you're going to want to SBR this and put on the right stock, but you get the wrong trigger guard, you get the wrong plate at the end of the receiver. And as far as I can tell, you also get the wrong barrel detachment system and the safety selector switch. It looks close, but it's not 100% right. And if you want to go further and you're a total dork and a geek like I am, you can go this route, but this is going to be a lot more expensive and time consuming. And the hardest part to find is this handguard. And as I said, if you're able to pick up a Generation 1 or a Generation 2, the handguard itself is exactly the same. There is no difference whatsoever. The only thing is you have to find this little part, which you can buy from Midwest Industries as a replacement part for their handguard. So that's not hard to get, but the handguard itself is. So maybe that will help somebody in the future who wants to clone this out. But this is my clone rifle build of the Air Force GAU-5A Aircrew Service Defense weapon. And I'm very proud of it because, as said, as far as I can tell, nobody else has ever tried to clone this gun as close as I have. I would say this gun is probably 95% clone correct. The only thing I'm not 100% sure on really is the barrel, and of course it's not a full auto receiver. And I know I'm always going to get those clone clowns telling me it's not full auto, it's not a real clone. I get it, okay? I'm a civilian, okay? I'm not in the military. This is about as good as I can do. But this is a Colt lower receiver. It is property of United States government marked M4A1 carbine. So it has all of those markings on it, which would be very close to what the military uses. And I'm really happy with this. But I gotta say, Midwest Industries did a pretty darn good job with their version. But if you're a nerd or a geek like I am, you'll probably be just a little bit disappointed. But some things you can change out. As I said, the brace, you can change out the trigger guard, you can change out the end plate on the receiver, pretty easy. You can spend a lot of money to change out the barrel detachment system, but that's probably not needed. But everything else on this is pretty much correct. And I just wanted to compare and contrast this. But this, of course, is a labor of love. So what do you guys think? Do you guys like my clone correct GAU-5A Aircrew Service Defense weapon? I have never seen any other gun like this that has been built by any other cloner. So I'm kind of proud of this one. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.